Greetings and welcome back. It's your host, Gabe Morales. As I mentioned in part one of the Lucchese Crime Family, Anthony Tony Duck Corallo was anointed boss of the Lucchese family in the late 1960s and ran it throughout the 1970s until the mid-1980s. In the early 1980s, Corallo unknowingly provided the government with evidence that would all but end his career. Over the years, Corallo and Salvatore Avellino established a stranglehold on the garbage hauling business in Long Island. To gather evidence against Avellino, members of the New York State Organized Crime Task Force used an undercover informant, Robert Kubecka, the owner of a Suffolk County garbage hauling business. Since the 1970s, Kubecka had refused to cooperate with mob-controlled waste hauling and had suffered extensive harassment and death threats as a result. In 1982, Kubecka agreed to wear a wire during his alleged concession meetings with mobsters. From these recorded conversations, the task force learned about the commission's internal structure, history, and relations with other crime families. And this evidence was used, along with other probable cause, to make a RICO case against Corallo and other family bosses in the infamous Mafia commission trial. Lucchese boss Corallo, Underboss Santoro, and Consigliere Funari were all indicted and faced trial in 1986. As the trial wore on, Corallo realized that the entire Lucchese hierarchy was about to be decimated, and in the fall of 1986, he chose Anthony Buddy Luongo as acting boss. However, Luongo disappeared shortly after. It is said that Corallo initially wanted to anoint a longtime protege of Funari's, Anthony Gaspare Casso, but Corallo's ultimate choice was Vittorio Vic Amuso, another capo of Funari's old crew. Musso officially became boss in January 1987 when Corallo, Santoro, and Funari were all sentenced to 100 years in prison. Amuso had been described as being the deadly Don by the United States Attorney's Office, and he previously was an enforcer for rival Profaci crime family boss Crazy Joe Gallo in Brooklyn. Amuso wisely made Casso his underboss in 1989 and allowed him to exert great influence over family decisions. It is estimated that Casso alone murdered between 30 to 40 people and ordered over another 100 murders during his reign. During the late 1980s, the Lucchese family underwent a great deal of turmoil. Both Amuso and his fierce underboss, Casso, were the first two members of the Lucchese family's Brooklyn wing to head the family, and this often put them at odds with other rival factions. Musso and Casso were strong rivals of Gambino crime family boss John Gotti and strong allies of Genovese crime family boss Vincent the Chin Gigante. Angry over the unauthorized murder of Gambino crime family boss Paul Castellano, Corallo and Gigante conspired to murder John Gotti, and Corallo had given the contract to Amuso and Casso since he was on trial and soon incarcerated. On April 13, 1986, a car bomb killed Gambino underboss Frank DeSico, but missed the intended target, John Gotti. Assassination attempt started a long and bloody war between the Gambino, Lucchese, and Genovese families, with many deaths reported on all sides. In 1988, 20 Lucchese family members were acquitted of racketeering and celebrated their court victory.
Jury found them not guilty after deliberating about 14 hours. Pablo Guzman is at the victory celebration in Newark, New Jersey. Pablo?
Thank you, Cora. The party has moved from Terry's Bar to the Vesuvius restaurant here in Newark. And as you can see, it's a happy occasion, a happy crowd, a rather significant decision for the defendants, many of whom are here, along with their defense team, including defense attorney Maria Noto. Maria, what's your reaction at the verdict?
I am absolutely thrilled. I think that when a jury returns a verdict in a 17-month trial after 1.5 days, there's only one logical conclusion that can be drawn, and that conclusion is that these jurors are sending a message to these attorneys working for the government, and that message is that the testimony of paid witnesses with lengthy, heinous criminal records will never be an acceptable substitute for proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We're absolutely thrilled. Justice has been done.
They're on a roll here today, as you can see, and they're going to be partying into the night. These are some of the events from earlier in the day.
The government's loss was the defendant's gain, and a reason to party hardy. All 20 defendants were found not guilty of racketeering charges in the longest-running crime trial in federal history. 21 months of government work down the tubes.
I certainly don't feel embarrassed, and I don't think we should feel embarrassed. I think we should feel proud for what we tried to do.
They produced the scum of the earth to testify against 20 basically good people. And I think the jury said, you know, we're not going to buy it. Forget about it.
Years later, in the early 1990s, the feds charged more mobsters associated with the Lucchese family in New Jersey. During the late 1980s, Amuso began demanding 50% of all profits generated by the New Jersey faction crew. New Jersey leaders Acquittal and Michael Teixeira refused Amuso's demands, and in retaliation, Amuso and Casso ordered the entire Jersey crew killed. Fearing for their lives, all Jersey crews skipped meeting with the bosses and went into hiding. And Jersey crew leaders Teixeira and Acquittal were later put on trial in 1990. Amuso and Casso had their own troubles. Both were implicated in a case involving window sales to New York City at inflated prices, and they also went into hiding due to that case. It was at that time Alfonso Little Al de Arco was named acting boss. Next few years, Amuso and Casso ruled the family from out of the area and ordered the executions of anyone they deemed was getting in their way. Their penchant for violence convinced many Lucchese family members that Amuso and Casso were no longer acting and thinking rationally. Following a series of botch hits by Amuso and Casso on family members they suspected of being informants, the opposite actually occurred, with many of them really turning to the feds for protection. For instance, Amuso had ordered the slaying of Capo Peter Fat Pete Chiodo, who was in charge of the Windows case operation. He was shot 12 times but survived, and once he recovered, turned state's evidence and blew open the case on the entire Windows operation, which was estimated to be approximately $150 million in value. It stated that Chiodo crew capo Richie Pagarullo, as well as associates Michael Spinelli and brother-in-law Robert, conspired to kill Chiodo and threatened to kill his wife and shot at his sister, Patricia Capasalo. Usually, women and children were off limits in mob hits. After Amuso had sanctioned the hit on Jersey boss Anthony Casso, who, as I mentioned, went on trial in 1990, he also started cooperating with the government. Their planned executions even went as high as acting boss DeArco. Furious at the failed hit on Chiodo, Amuso set DeArco up to be killed at a Manhattan hotel. However, this hit also failed after DeArco saw the hitman hiding a gun in his shirt and slip into the bathroom, a common tactic for a classic Mafia setup hit. DeArco then fled for his life and turned himself over to authorities, and also became an informant, and became the first boss of a New York crime family, acting or permanent, to become a government informant. Enforcement eventually caught up to Amuso and Casso on July 29, 1991. Amuso was captured in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Casso was captured in New Jersey. During the investigation, it was found out that two major New York City Police Department detectives, Louis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa, had been on Casso's payroll, as I mentioned in the NYPD corruption video. After Casso turned informant on Amuso and placed in the Witness Protection Program, he was thrown out in 1998 after numerous infractions, including previously bribing guards, assaulting other inmates, making false statements about Sammy the Bull Gravano and DeArco, and other things that made the federal government decide he was no longer worth protecting, and he died in prison from complications related to COVID in December of 2020. While Amuso was in prison, he regained control of the family and chose Joseph Little Joe DeFede to become his new acting boss. DeFede supervised the powerful garment district traffic for the mob, and reportedly earned between $40,000 to $60,000 a month. They then placed Stephen Crea in charge of the family's labor and construction racketeering operations, and Crea was said to have made up to $500,000 every year for the mob. Throughout the mid-1990s, Amuso maintained control of the family via these two mobsters, but in 1998, DeFede was arrested and indicted on 9 counts of racketeering. At that time, that Stephen Crea was promoted to new acting boss. When Crea was promoted, Crea, along with his Bronx Connection allies, shifted the family's power base away from Brooklyn and back to Bronx and Upper Manhattan crews, which had historically controlled the family since its origins. On September 6, 2000, Stephen Wonderboy Crea and 7 other Lucchese family members were arrested and jailed on extortion charges, mostly in regards to their construction business rackets. After Crea's imprisonment, Consigliere Louis Lubegos Didone took control of the family. However, his tenure was short-lived. When Didone was arrested in 2003, imprisoned boss Vic Amuso created a three-man ruling panel to run the family. This consisted of Capos Aniello Migliori, Joseph Ni Napoli, and Matthew Madonna. In December 2007, two members of the panel, Di Napoli and Madonna, were arrested, along with New Jersey faction capo Ralph V. Perna and soldier Nicodomo Scarfo Jr., after authorities began Operation Heat regarding the family's control of illegal gambling, money laundering, and racketeering based in New Jersey and Costa Rica.
Good evening. In the words of one top law enforcement official, organized crime is on the run in this state.
That pronouncement came as officials disclosed the indictments of 53 suspected mobsters from 3 different crime families.
As Trish DeGasperis reports, those arrested face charges ranging from murder to racketeering.
The indictments announced today by the State Attorney General's office were so far-reaching you needed a scorecard to keep track. And this scorecard was a who's who at 3 different crime families, the Lucchese, Bonanno, and Bruno Scarfo families.
The activities went into 26 separate municipalities, 7 counties, New York, Philadelphia, and Florida, and they were all through our state.
Much of this case is based on mob informants, and the charges range from 3 murders to extorting businesses on the Point Pleasant Boardwalk, loan sharking, arson, and even a shakedown of a contractor at the Rodino Federal Building in Newark. Accused of one murder are the men who allegedly run the Lucchese Crime Family in New Jersey. They were arraigned today. Martin Tessetta, Thomas Riccardi, and Michael Ryan are charged with beating a former associate to death with golf clubs. That associate, Vincent Craparata, showed disrespect by not cutting them in on a business deal, according to authorities. Also charged with racketeering activities in connection with the murder are alleged capo Michael Tessetta, now in federal prison on tax evasion and gun charges, and Anthony Asaturo in jail for refusing to speak to a grand jury.
In October 2009, the Lucchese family was hit with 2 separate indictments, charging a total of 49 members and associates with racketeering. That grossed an estimated $400 million a year. In 2019, Crea, Madonna, and Di Napoli were convicted and sentenced to prison. Di Napoli pled guilty in February of 2016 at the age of 80 years old. In August of 2020, Lucchese Crime Family boss Stephen Wonderboy Crea was sentenced to life in prison for murder and racketeering, along with 18 other made men, either members or associates. Crimes such as murder, attempted murders, assault, extortions, defrauding a hospital, drug trafficking, loan sharking, and illegal gambling that took place between the years 2000 to 2017. In another trial, it was found that Crea, Matthew Madonna, Christopher Lodonio, and Terrence Caldwell were found guilty in the 2013 murder of Michael Meldish. Meldish, however, was no saint and was suspected of carrying out over a dozen gang murders during his criminal career. Recently, in 2025, more Lucchese family members were arrested for racketeering.
New Jersey State Police, meanwhile, say they broke up a mafia-run gambling ring across North Jersey. In all, 39 people got charged in connection with the alleged Lucchese mafia ring racket. And among those charged, George Zappola of Red Bank, who the state attorney general says is a ruling panel member of the Mafia family. Earlier this week, we reported that Prospect Park council member Anand Shah was arrested too. Investigators say he ran illegal gambling and sports books for the Mafia out of his local business. Investigators showed pictures of 4 bars and restaurants where back rooms were allegedly turned into mini gambling parlors in Patterson, Totowa, Garfield, and Woodland Park.
This was not a backyard betting pool. This was a highly structured, highly profitable criminal enterprise run by people who believed they were above the law.
Investigators say the gambling ring brought in more than $3 million in proceeds. Charges stemming from the 2-year investigation now include racketeering, gambling, and money laundering, and several defense lawyers we reached out to did not return our request for comment.
By finding new ways to make money in the 21st century, the family took advantage of the banking industry, housing and mortgage fraud, and loan sharking. They also used new online technology to improve their illegal gambling operations via offshore websites that gamblers used on the internet. It's my understanding that although he is still incarcerated, Vic Amuso still remains the official boss of the Lucchese Crime Family. Let me know if you've heard something different. So, I hope you enjoyed this coverage of the Lucchese Crime Family. I only have one family left, and that is the Gambinos, coming up shortly. Until then, I hope you stay safe and stay blessed. This has been Gabe Morales signing off. Gangsters, cops, and politicians.